Hey guys, alright, today, alright, actually I'm going to start off by listing, I am a Viking Age historian. Well, kinda. I'm a Wessex Viking Age historian. English, politics kind of thing. Not Viking. I study the English side of things, the anglo-saxon side of things, not the Viking side of things. But, of course, when you study one side, you kind of do have an understanding of the other side of the events that you're studying, of course. I mean, that's what helps you have a better understanding of the time period and what you're talking about, especially when it comes to like the politics of, how the politics of Wessex, of Alfred's kingdom, evolved throughout his reign due to the Viking incursions. This is called Five Great Viking Deaths and What They Tell Us About the Viking Mindset. Mindset by, what's this channel called? I've watched them so many times. Why am I forgetting their name? Dude, my brain's just not working today. By Epic History TV. God, that's embarrassing. I do have a theory. Now, this is not a theory that is really supported by anything that I've read. It's just something that I just thought of one day at like 2 a.m. because I was bored. I was just like, what if this is that? Or that is that? Something like that. It's just something that I've thought about. And this is the idea of Valhalla. Now, because of pop culture, books, and whatnot, and what has survived of the Viking people, the Viking Age, is this idea of Thor and Odin and Valhalla being very upfront and forefront in the Nordic, Norse, Scandinavian mindset. I kind of think that maybe it was not as big as we think it was. I think Valhalla was rarer. It was either rarer or much more common than what we say. Like either the literal only way to get accepted into Valhalla to fight in Ragnarok is to die in battle with a weapon in your hand, or two, certain life events such as pregnancy or losing battles with disease or something might have been considered worthy enough for those to enter Valhalla. That second one I'm not too sure about. I think maybe women in pregnancy might have been given higher status. I mean, similar to how Spartans did. If a woman died during giving birth, she would be honored. Because, pregnancy's tough. It puts a big strain on the body. Very high chance of death. And there's still a good chance of death even with modern medicine. It's a dangerous thing. I feel like I shouldn't need to explain that, but why not? So I think either because of what has survived, we have this idea that it was more important, but I don't know, there's just some gut feeling that I have that maybe it was rare. It was actually a rare thing to go to Valhalla, that it was actually something very, very special, which is why Thor and Odin would be the two main gods, because to sit at their table and feast with them and fight alongside them in Ragnarok is a rare thing, thus putting them at the forefront of the religion, making them like the typical heads of the religion. Now, of course, this could be completely wrong. I accept if it's completely wrong. It's just a random thought that I had. So, yeah. I don't know. Just something that was in my mind, and I wanted to share it before getting into this video. But let's go ahead and hear Epic History TV's arguments and the 5 Great Viking Deaths. The Vikings and the descendants speak for themselves. Their many voices express a spirit which is like no other on earth. Professor Tom Shippey, Laughing Shall I Die? Ooh, that's a new book, 2018. That is good research. If they use, remember, you want to use, when it comes to your secondary sources, or just your sources in general, sources from the modern day that study, from other historians and whatnot. You want to use the most recent stuff, because arguments shift over time. The focus by historians shifts over time. So you want to get an understanding of, okay, what does the modern historian think of this compared to what the historians maybe back then thought of? What has changed? What information is becoming revealed, and what's new, right? That's what you want to look for.
AD 793. Raiders appear without warning off England's east coast. They land at Lindisfarne, known as Holy Island, where they slaughter monks, steal treasure and holy relics, then vanish back across the Dark Sea. It was Western Europe's first traumatic encounter with the Vikings. For 3 centuries, these pagan pirates from Scandinavia terrorized Europe, raiding, extorting, enslaving, and ultimately conquering. They roamed deep into Russia and the Mediterranean, even daring to attack what they called Miklagard, the great city Constantinople.
Damn right they did.
Viking longships and a mastery of seamanship and navigation gave them the ability to strike at will, with the element of surprise. But their enemies, including anglo-saxons and Franks,
Anglo-Saxons, that's what I studied.
Proud warrior cultures. Was there something more that gave the Vikings their lethal edge? Professor Tom Shippey is an expert in Viking history and
Hold the phone. Did they do an interview? Did they fucking do an interview? If they fucking did that,
medieval literature. He believes their success can be attributed in part to a unique mindset.
Dude, their channel's doing what I wish I could do.
Sagas. We have a great many sagas written in the Vikings' own
language. Oh my god, they are. Hold up. Professor Tom Shippey. What? I'm Googling this, man. This guy sounds familiar. I knew it! I knew this guy looked familiar. This guy is a Tolkien nerd. This guy is I believe the forefront English professor when it comes to J.R.R. Tolkien. If you watch the Lord of the Rings extended editions, you watch the appendices, this man is their Tolkien head, or whatever. He's the one they use to talk about Tolkien and whatnot. I knew he looked familiar. All right, so he also studies anglo-saxons.
Old Norse. There's the famous sagas of Icelanders, but there's also Konungasögur, that's sagas of kings. There's Fornaldarsögur, sagas of old times. These are looked on with suspicion these days because they were written hundreds of years later, mostly in far-off Iceland.
Yeah.
People say, oh, well, you can't rely on those for history. They're fiction. Well, actually, a lot of it is fiction, and some of it's fairy tale, and you can pick that out quite easily. But a lot of it isn't fiction. I think it's based on family memories, and people who can't read and write often have good memories, and they take memories seriously and they pass them on. Leaving the fact and fiction question aside, they do all express, I think, a very characteristic and consistent attitude, which I call the Viking mindset. And that's...
I'm not going to dispute anything that this guy says. This guy has decades of experience, so of course I'm not going to fucking say shit. Remember, I do believe myself to be fair, when it comes to Anglo-Saxons, I say I'm a pretty good source on that, right? I feel like you guys could come in, ask me questions down in the comments about them, of course, and I'd be able to answer your questions. But you have to remember, especially when I start making videos, I don't know everything. I'm 22 as of recording this video. It is literally impossible for me to know all that much information. I know a good bit, but I'm not gonna know much. This guy here, though, decades. Like, I feel like you guys can trust me, but also do your own research. Find sources from people like this guy, because what he says, he's done the research. He's done the decades. I don't know why I'm discrediting myself. I'm Man, I'm good at advertising myself. I'm good at marketing myself, aren't I?
It's really quite distinctive. Two of the distinctive things about it are the fascination with scenes of death, with famous
God, I
death
can't believe they
songs,
actually got
with
this
famous
historian.
last stands,
Wow,
all that
this is
kind of thing.
amazing.
And
This is a
the
famous
other
historian
very
too.
characteristic
This isn't just
sense
like
of humor, which
this isn't just one of those like one of the there are a bunch of historians in the world, but they got this guy. This guy is on the appendices for both the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy. Granted, no matter what you think, even if you don't like the Hobbit trilogy, it's not that good of an adaptation, but they're still okay. With I'm not gonna rant about the Hobbit trilogy. He's in those appendices. He's in those special editions, and this YouTube channel got him. That's just fucking amazing.
I'm afraid it's not good
Oh my
sense
God.
of humor. It's bad sense of humor. It's the kind of humor which is really rather cruel or grim. And we see quite a lot of it.
We'll look at 5 famous death scenes from the old Norse sagas.
All right, I'm gonna
to see what they can tell us.
I'm gonna try and
about the
stop
Viking
pausing.
mindset. This video is sponsored by Curiosity Stream.
I need to get myself a
home to
Curiosity.
thousands of
Of course, they're using Ragnar.
Many
Yeah.
tales are told of the legendary Ragnar Lothbrok. His own saga says he was the son of a Swedish king and slew a dragon, but that when he sailed to England seeking further fame and riches, he was shipwrecked off the coast of Northumbria. He was taken prisoner by its Christian king, Ella, who decided to inflict a terrible death on the famous Viking. He had him thrown into a pit of venomous snakes. As he faced death, Ragnar called out to the king.
The famous line from the death of Ragnar is Gnithia mundu grisir ef galtar hag vissi. The piggies would grunt if they knew how the old boar died. The word Gnithia, it means grunt, but it also kind of sounds like grunt. And I think you could actually translate it, go oink oink. The piggies would go oink oink if they knew how the old boar died. It's a joke, and the joke is actually on King Ella, because there's this barnyard vocabulary, piggies and oink, but what it means is, my sons are going to come, and what they do to you won't bear thinking about. It's a threat. The funny thing is, although it's a late saga, this story about the piggies was known earlier, because it was actually quoted by a Latin chronicler. He'd heard about the piggies, he got the phrase right, he just didn't understand what it meant. He thought Ragnar was saying, if my sons knew about this, they'd come and rescue me. But he didn't. He wasn't hoping to rescue, he knew he hadn't got any hope. He was saying, my sons, when they hear about this, then they'll avenge me. And of course they did.
Ragnar's death in a snake pit is almost certainly invented, but his sons, the piggies, were very real. In 865, the Ragnarsons landed in England with a great army, rampaging across East Anglia and Northumbria.
You see, everyone talks about how, I said I wouldn't pause much, but I have to so I can get this thought out, this tangent out. Ragnar Lothbrok most likely didn't exist, but Ivar the Boneless, Bjorn Ironside, Sigurd Snake, and the Iron Halfdan Ragnarsson all claim to be brothers. Did they lie about them being brothers? Were they liars? Or did they all actually share the same father? And if so, of course it aids their legitimacy as kings, as Sigurd, I believe, was king of Denmark, and Bjorn was of course king of Sweden. Halfdan and Ivar would go on to rule land in England. Ivar would rule in York. Halfdan would be elsewhere. I can't remember where. And so I don't know. Like, I feel like maybe he wasn't as... Obviously, he did not really slay a dragon, but, you know, maybe Ragnar was a real person. I don't know. It's tough to say when you have all four of these people claiming to be siblings and be the sons of Ragnar.
And killing King Ella.
And also deciding to come and invade England at the same time. And specifically targeting King Aella. That to me tells me that Aella definitely did something to a family member, someone close to those four Vikings, to the four sons of Ragnar. So, in my mind, based on that context, I feel like Ragnar had to exist. Now, he definitely may not have existed in the way that he's been mythicized, of course, and mainly talked about, but perhaps he was a king of Sweden or something like that, right?
Is there any link between these historical events and the saga tale of Ragnar's death?
Oh, okay, they're going to talk about it.
England
Let's see.
was invaded by men who were very early on identified as the Ragnarsons. And my suggestion would be that the whole story of Ragnar's death in the snake pit was made up later on in order to motivate the invasion of England. Why did the Ragnar sons invade England? They did it to take vengeance for their father. And so you make up a story about the death of the father and the way that the vengeance was motivated.
Okay, so I am not entirely wrong. I am right that there was a father. It was just mythicized. That's kind of right. Yes! I don't know who King Hrolf is.
According to legend, Rolf Kraki was a great
Kraki. Oh, I've heard that name
of the
before.
6th century, a Danish King Arthur.
Oh.
His great hall stood near Lera, where he entertained a famous band of champions. But many sought his throne. His own cousin, Hjörvarthr, made a surprise dawn attack on the king's hall. After a desperate last stand, Hrolf lay dead, surrounded by his champions. Only one man survived. Vögr, the weakest man in Hrolf's court. He'd been the butt of all jokes, even when he'd sworn to avenge Hrolf's death. Now he was hauled before the new king, Hjörvarthr.
Hrolf is dead, and all his champions are dead as well. That's the right thing to do, except Vögr, who is dragged out of a pile of bodies. And for some reason, Hjörvarthr thinks it would be a good idea to get a pledge of allegiance from Hrolf's last surviving champion. So they get Vögr, and he is hauled up, asked to swear allegiance to Hjörvarthr, and Hjörvarthr gives him his sword to swear allegiance on. Bad idea. Vögr picks it up, runs Hjörvarthr through. That's the end of Hjörvarthr and the Skildung dynasty, and of course Vögr is immediately killed. But he has fulfilled his vow. So it's another example, really, of the Viking love of, shall we say, wit, of being able to turn the tables in a funny kind of way. Once again, Ragnar's joke was on King Ella, and Vögr's joke is on King Hjörvarthr. Very funny, in a sort of way.
In a sort of way,
Legends
from a
about
certain
King
point of view.
Hrolf come from a tumultuous period of Europe's history, traditionally known as the Dark Ages. But recent discoveries suggest the tales of King Hrolf have a basis in fact.
King Hrolf is the Danish King Arthur. They lived at about the same time in the early 6th century. For a long time, the story of King Hrolf was regarded rather like the story of King Arthur, you know, it couldn't be true. But then the archaeologists, alerted by a chance discovery, started looking at the traditional site of King Hrolf's court, which is now the small village of Lera in Denmark. And much to their surprise, they discovered the site of one enormous hall after another. I think they have now found 6 of them, all through the Viking and pre-Viking era. So that part of the story, at least, was true. Lera, once upon a time Hlethraborg, really was a major power center in the early Viking period.
Yo, Yoms Vikings?
The Yoms Vikings were a legendary group of Viking mercenaries, picked men bound by a code of honor. According to Old Norse sagas, they had a fortified base on the Baltic coast at Jomsborg. In 986, they were recruited by the King of Denmark to subjugate Jarl Håkon of Lauder. But at Hjörungavágr, they suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of Jarl Håkon and his son Jarl Eirik. Vikings rarely offered or expected mercy.
This is not the video I thought it was going to be, but it's so much better than I thought it was going to be.
Were lined up
oh my
for
god.
execution.
This is so good.
The beheading started, and the Yoms Vikings, who had a code of their own which forbade them to express fear at any point. One of them, for instance, said he would not kneel down to be beheaded. He insisted on standing up and being beheaded from the front so that people could see that he did not flinch from the blow. One guy does kneel down to be beheaded, and he says, I'm a bit worried about my hair. I don't want to get blood on it. Could somebody very kindly take my hair and pull it over my head, and then the beheading can go on. But as the axe falls, he jerks his head back, and the falling axe
I've heard about this.
cuts off the hands of the man who's been holding his hair. Well, that's bad sense of humor for you. What a joke. Everybody laughs like nobody's business. In particular, actually, Jarl Eirik, who thinks he's never seen anything so funny in all his life. It was such a good joke, he says, well, we'll let you off. And the Yoms Viking very properly says, can't accept that unless you let all the others off too. So the other Yoms Vikings are then all spared. Well, you know, obviously complete fiction. No, can't believe a word of it. Yeah, about 15 miles away in that direction from where we're standing, just recently they were digging for a new road, and they came upon a pile of skeletons, about 50 odd, and a separate pile of skulls. All the skeletons had been beheaded, and analysis showed they were all male, they were mostly young, and they were all Scandinavians. Okay, so there was a mass beheading, just as described in the saga, and furthermore, several of the men had been beheaded from the front, just as in the saga. So, once again, what appeared to be complete fiction turns out to have some corroboration in hard fact.
Olaf Haraldson,
This is such a good. Honestly, this is my favorite video they've ever made.
Its patron saint,
I'm just saying that this is my favorite.
Viking
Oh
before
my
he
god.
became a Christian king. In 1029, the Danes, supported by local jarls, drove Olaf into exile. When he and his followers returned the next year to reclaim the throne, they were met by a huge army of hostile pagan farmers. Retreat was not an option for Olaf. On the morning of battle, the restless king rose early and asked his poet, Thormod, to sing to him, to pass the hours before the army gathered.
And Thormod immediately starts to sing the Bjarkamal, which is actually a poem supposed to be sung by Böðvar Bjarki on the morning of the last stand of King Hrolf, which we've discussed already. Dagar is opkomen dunja hana fjadrar, maules vil mögum at vinna elfidi. Vaki eok vaki, vinna hövuð, allir inni utstu aðils of sinar. Haar in hathgreipi, Hrolfur skjötandi, uitum góðir menn, there is ekki flygja. Vekka útrat vini, nea divs runum, vek útr höðum, Hildar at Leiki. The day has come up, the roosters clap their wings, time for the wretched serfs to do the heavy labor. Wake now, wake, company of friends, all you best ones of Athil's people. Har the hard grip, Hrolf the shooter, men of good birth, they who do not flee. I do not wake you to wine, nor the whispers of women. I wake you to the hard sport of Hildar. It seems a strange choice for a poem, because it is in a way a suicide poem. It's saying we're all going to get killed. Is this a good morale raiser? Yeah, they're Vikings. They think it's great. Everybody says, super song, just the thing. Let's get started on the battle.
But the odds were stacked against King Olaf and his men. Thormod's song of brave men rising to face certain death proved a premonition.
The battle is lost. King Olaf is killed fighting in the front rank and is brought down by a series of spear and axe blows. And as you would expect, all his chosen companions, all his bodyguard are killed around him. But Thormod the poet, survives. Not his fault, he just happens to survive. And at the end of the battle, when it's all over, he laments that he has not been allowed to join his king. And at that moment, an arrow comes flying from nowhere and hits him. And the obvious implication is the dead king sent it. He sent it so as to give Thormod his wish that he could join Olaf. And Thormod then composes a poem about his own wound and dies without quite finishing it. He dies on his feet, still reciting the poem, but he doesn't complete the last line, which fortunately is completed for him by a bystander. And the bystander is the teenage Harald Hardrada.
No way.
Harald Hardrada grew to become King of Norway.
That is
one of the greatest.
That is some weird fucking coincidence. Oh my god. That's just weird.
His adventures led him east to the city
That's
of
just
Kiev,
weird.
where he served at the court of Grand
How
Prince
all that
Yaroslav
lines
the
up.
Wise.
What?
Then to Constantinople, where he commanded the Varangian Guard of the Byzantine Emperor. As King of Norway, Harald the Hard Ruler was brave, cruel, and acquisitive, and in 1066 set his sights on the English throne. But King Harold Godwinson marched north to meet him, moving so rapidly he caught the Vikings off guard at Stamford Bridge.
The thing about the Battle of Stamford Bridge is that Harald Hardrada and his invasion force, they were caught napping. Harold Godwinson marched very quickly up to York and kept on marching through York, and the first thing the Norwegians knew about it was seeing the glint of weapons approaching. But it was a hot day, and the Norwegians had left their heavy equipment, especially their armor and their shields, down on their ships.
Oh no.
So they were actually facing an armored force without their armor.
Heedless of the risk, Hardrada advanced into battle at the head of his men. According to the Heimskringla sagas, written by the Icelander Snorri Sturluson, he composed poetry even now.
Fram gungum veri fylkegu, brunju lösir und bla regjar, Hjalmar skina, hefkat mina, nu ligger struð vart at skipum nedri. Forward we go in formation, without armor against blue steel edges. Helmets shine, I don't have mine. Now our gear lies down with the ships. I think it's quite good, actually, the poem. But Harold, who is a terrible poetic snob, thinks about it for a bit and says, no, that was too simple. And then he produces another poem in a much more complex and high-class meter and says that's much better.
Hardrada threw himself into the thick of the fighting, unarmored, wielding his sword with both hands. Fearless and defiant to the end, he died with an English arrow in his throat, alongside most of his army. He is often called the last Viking.
According to the saga, the Norwegians arrived in 400 ships and the survivors went home in 24. The Anglo-Saxons let them go. That, you might say, put an end to ideas that England could be conquered by Norwegians or Danes or Vikings. The Viking era then was over. Harald Hardrada, you can only say, well, he died like a Viking, making jokes, making poems, lashing out with both hands until he was killed.
But can these poems really be attributed to Harald Hardrada.
I don't see there's any way that the poems could be genuine. After all, who was there to note it down or remember it?
Yeah.
Practically none of the Norwegians survived. I expect Snorri Sturluson made them up himself to help his story out. But they're good poems. They express a kind of, not regretful attitude, but it's sort of rueful. Yeah, well, we're not going to win this one. They caught us this time. Oh well, that's the way it goes. We will just have to fight it out. And that strikes me as, again, a characteristic Viking attitude.
The Battle of Stamford Bridge had unintended consequences, paving the way for another invader to become King of England.
The Battle of Stamford Bridge was, of course, a catastrophe. It was a catastrophe for the Norwegians, but it was a catastrophe for the English as well, because they took very heavy casualties as well. And 3 weeks after the Battle of Stamford Bridge, they fought the Battle of Hastings against William the Conqueror. And you can't help thinking, if they'd been at full strength, they'd have won.
On the 14th of October 1066, the English army suffered a crushing defeat at Hastings, and Harold Godwinson was killed. England's new king, William the Conqueror, was himself descended from a Viking adventurer.
Rollo.
The Viking Age was at an end. For nearly 3 centuries, Europe had been terrorized.
This makes me want to play some Crusader Kings 3, man.
Whose attitude to death gave them a
fuck.
dangerous edge.
What finally strikes me about the Viking mindset is not so much the defiance in the face of death, that's what you expect heroes to do. It's actually the matter-of-fact attitude, and also the liking for some kind of a joke. You can actually use vulgar words like Ragnar in the snake pit. You
Oink,
can
oink.
play dirty tricks like Vugger with his Pledge of Allegiance, or you can play practical jokes like the Yoms Viking getting the guy's hands cut off, or you can
practical
nitpick about
joke.
poetry like Thormod and Harald Hardrada. All these say death is coming, it's certain, but actually I'm going to see what I can do to make this memorable. What it makes me think is that when it comes to Vikings, you can kill them, and speaking as an Englishman, we did over there. But frighten them, that's not going to work. They're always going to come back at you. You're not safe until the very last one of them is dead.
Wow.
Thank you to Curiosity Street.
Wow. That's their best video. Honestly, probably best history video I've seen on YouTube. I might be biased because, you know, Vikings and Anglo-Saxons, but god damn, they got a real fucking historian. They got a published, one of the most popular Anglo-Saxon historians, Anglo-Saxon Viking historians around today to do this video. That is fucking amazing. Oh my god, I'm just blown away. That's just amazing. Wow. I'm really lost. I was totally wrong at the beginning with what I thought this video was going to be about. I'm not disappointed. This was way better than I thought it was going to be. I thought this was just going to be talking about how, all right, these are how these Vikings died. Here's what it tells us about like their mindset, the way they viewed war. That wasn't this. This was just about, you know, hey, they were pretty funny people. They like to crack jokes about death. They didn't really take death too seriously. They were lighthearted about it. They accepted death. Wow. I'm just gonna end the video. I really have. I'm just blown away. Oh, that was a good fucking video. Yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more. And I'll see you guys in the next video.